So welcome everyone to the Emerging Trends webinar series. Our first topic, Introduction to People Risk Management. We're excited to have everyone here today. We've got some great content in store for you. So let's just get into this. I'd like to start by introducing our presenters. Myself, Zachary Rosenthal, Senior Risk Advisor with EIG Risk. I have a history in the workers' comp claims arena, 15 years experience working for Ahmed Clinics, particularly Physicians Health Center in the Miami market, where I've gained extensive knowledge handling workers' comp claims, advising clients on best practices in workers' comp. And now I've started my career on the insurance side of the business, learning some new aspects to risk management. So I'm excited to share my knowledge with you today as we begin this Emerging Trends series. I'm also joined here by Eddie Martinez. He is the Vice President for EIG Risk. He has 25 years of insurance industry experience, of which 20 years have been devoted to successfully creating, training, and leading an award-winning risk management department. Eddie is passionate about people risk management. He is the vice president here and has helped hundreds of companies lower their risk by helping implement the P4 process, which we're going to get more into today. It all starts with a simple risk questionnaire in creating a roadmap that focuses on 4 key areas of risk: pre-hire, post-offer, prevention, and post-claim. I'm also joined here by Steve Heinen, risk advisor. He is a guru and the founder of the People Risk Management process over in Georgia, joining us from out of state, but really knowledgeable on this with over 40 years of experience in risk management. And Steve will tell you a little bit more about his history and himself as we get into this presentation. So Steve, kick it off for us. Tell us a little bit about people risk management, because many people signed up for this webinar and maybe are not too familiar with this concept. So let's understand, what is people risk management?
Sure, Zach, and thanks for the introduction. I told him to introduce me as the Chief Perspective Officer, because that means I'm really old. And I think one of the things you're going to come away with, we got folks from a lot of different background. We got safety, we got claims, we got HR, and everything in between. And so I think one of the things you're going to leave this webinar with, and hopefully you join us for the rest of the series, is we pull a lot of perspective together. So Zach, when I started this program in Georgia, I've been a career insurance broker, 42 years. The state board asked me to set up a claim training program called the Certified Work Comp Professional Program. We probably have a few of the CWCPs on this webinar today. I do about 500 a year through the program. But going way back to 1999 when I started the program, I'd been in the business about 18 years, was really good in workers' comp claims. But we pulled all these companies together. And what we found when we pulled 68 companies, these were self-insured employers, insurance carriers, and TPAs, is we found that we didn't really talk in workers' comp about what happens before the claim. And we didn't really talk about people. We talked about, how do we take zeros off a claim? And what I learned early in the program in 99 was there's so many things that happen before the claim. And so it's kind of evolved from there. I wrote a book called the Work Comp Playbook for Employers in 2002, sold over 7,000 copies of it. We've evolved it, and we'll talk about this later, evolved it into other lines like fleet and cyber and EPLI. But what you're probably wondering, and you're not going to hear an insurance broker sales pitch in this webinar, but you're going to wonder, why is an insurance broker so invested? Zach has a 15-year background on the op med side. Eddie came from a 20-year safety and risk management background working for a contract. You probably wonder why we're hiring so many people to serve really as risk managers. And our job as insurance brokers is to help employers reduce their cost of insurance. And what we found through years, I've done this with hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands at this point, clients, is people are the #1 risk. And so why does it matter when you go through this? And it doesn't matter what part of the ecosystem, I'm assuming if you're on this webinar, you're involved in risk management. And if you're involved in risk management, I think what's missing is we're siloed, where we're very siloed. You know, within an organization, you might have HR, safety, and operations siloed. Then you've got your broker involved, you got your insurance carrier involved, and you got the attorneys and all the vendors. And what I found was we just often drop the ball. So I created this process in 2002 to really help my clients understand the whole ecosystem of risk. And from there, you know, we talk a lot about risk profile. You'll hear us say this throughout the series. It's really a company's safety culture and their claim management equals their risk profile. And every employer, if you're a vendor, if you're an insurance carrier, you know, and certainly if you're an employer, you want to pay less for your insurance. And the only way we know to pay less for your insurance is improve your risk profile. So we're going to talk a lot through the series about how the employer can improve their risk profile. And then finally, why does it matter? Well, when an underwriter looks at your risk, they're going to look at your exposure and your losses, and then they're going to look at this thing called risk profile. And most insurance companies don't understand their clients' risk profile. You know, Zach mentioned an assessment. We do a lot of assessments of clients, and we present that information to underwriter. Again, stuff we're going to unpack. But here's what I want to leave you with before we go to the next slide, is this ecosystem called people risk management, P1, P2, P3, and P4, involves a lot of people. And what we have to do to really work for our clients and work together is understand how do we pull everybody together in the process. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that later in this program. So we're
So
going to,
Eddie,
go ahead, Zach.
Eddie, give us a little overview of your history in the industry because you have a unique background. So tell us about it.
Well, if you see, there's a little needle here that says safety, and then you see risk management in the middle, and then you see people risk management. I started my journey actually with a degree in construction management, and I started as a project manager. Then I moved into safety because I had good soft skills, and I enjoyed learning and teaching others. I wore a lot of hats, and I'm going to kind of show you a bunch of hats here. Some of these companies are actually on this call, but in walking the job sites and kind of doing inspections and talking to people, that made an impact, but it made an impact at a job site type of level. When I was in safety, I was focused more on compliance and getting employees trained, creating reports. And then I evolved into more of a leadership training focused on onboarding the new hires, teaching leaders, and teaching the frontline employees. And I saw much more results. And we're going to talk in this presentation about people risk management. And I want everybody, when they hear those words, to think leadership. Leadership is what truly impacts everything in your company, in your workplace. Most organizations only focus on safety and then risk management. They don't realize that risk management is also about people. So focus on your people, train your leaders, and you will see massive improvement in your safety and in your risk management.
So Steve, let's talk about the P4 process and how leadership affects these 4 Ps.
Zach, we'll go through some of the P4, some of the Ps later, but the biggest thing that I find missing in organizations is leadership. And you know, we're not talking about corporate leadership. We're not corporate leadership instructors, but we're talking to our clients about their role in managing risk. So if you think about it, you know, in the pre-hire, that's before an employee comes to work. And the post-offer is, how do you set the tone before they start working? That's largely management and HR. You kind of set the criteria of who you're going to hire, and then HR onboards them. As you move into the third P, you look at supervisors kind of drive that. And you've got to teach and train the supervisors. And then when we get to the fourth P, post-claim, that clearly falls on the leadership of the employee, accountability. And so, you know, what we find when we go out and talk to companies is maybe they got great upper management, but they're poor at the supervisor level. And if they're poor at the supervisor level, generally they're not going to have great accountability, higher litigation from employees. So people risk management is really about getting all the people from the company, all three levels. And that's what we're going to really focus on here. That foundation is leadership.
So I see in the audience, we have a lot of different roles. We have human resources, we have safety, adjusters, business owners, and this content applies to everyone. And this is going to be a webinar series. And as we progress, we're going to delve deeper into this process and all the different components that really will help make your company go from good to great. So even if you handle a piece, you're going to get a lot of knowledge, and specifically how leadership affects your entire organization. So this is the introduction to people risk management, but get ready because this is only the beginning.
And Zach, I just want to add, and I think it's great. You and Eddie did a great job putting this together, that we got all these different perspectives on this webinar. A lot of times, you know, when I teach a claims class with 200 people, it's usually claims people. And I speak at safety conferences, and it's safety people. And when I speak to HR groups, SHRM groups, it's usually only HR people. And everybody's got a little different perspective. And we're going to break down some of those perspectives today.
Oh, I can't wait. So we have a schedule up here of what we're going to be talking about monthly. We're going to be providing continuing education for all these trainings. So be on the lookout. We're going to get the invite out soon for our next webinar, where you can sign up for the series and keep learning with us. So let's start with a polling question. I'm going to launch a poll. Let's make this a little interactive here. So who manages the cost of claims? So let me grab this first poll. Okay, here we go. So everyone should have this up on their screen. Now, who's managing these costs? Is it 70% the employer and 30% the insurance company? Is it more the insurance company and less the employer? Or is it about 50-50? I'm curious what everyone here thinks.
We got a tight race.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Oh, okay. Oh, they're coming in. We'll give everyone another 10 seconds to answer.
Steve, I see why you like polls now. Look at
you guys are the you guys could see it as the host. I don't see it, so I'm anxious. You guys are seeing the feedback come in. I don't see it yet. So
yeah, I've done many webinars, but this is my first time doing polls, and it's exciting.
We got 71 people already responded.
And there's no right or wrong answer. Just get a vote in. What you think?
Yeah, we'll give it another. We're giving everyone a minute, so 10 more seconds, and then we're going to close it. But I think we have our results here, so I'm going to end the poll. 1, 2, 3. All right, let's share the results. So here we go. 39% says mostly on the employer, 32% is mostly on the insurance, and 29% 50-50.
Yeah.
So Steve, tell us what you think.
Well, I tell you, it's interesting when you have a blended group. That's what you get, about a third, a third, and a third. I got to tell you, when we go through and we talk about the cost of claims falling on the employer, I got to tell you, it's 70%. It's probably more like 90% now. The insurance carrier plays a role, but they play a very small role in the management of a claim. And I license 500 adjusters a year, and I tell them, hey, don't throw things at me when I say this. I want you to think about it this way. The employer controls the hiring process. The employer controls the paperwork, the documentation. The employer controls the prevention. The employer controls whether the supervisors have leadership training. I mean, the WCRI did a study and said the number one reason employees get an attorney is how they're treated by their supervisor. They're 200 to 300% more likely to get an attorney. And we know when an attorney is involved, cost goes up over 350%. So the cost clearly falls on the employer. If you hand a claim to an adjuster and that employee doesn't trust the company, there's no way they're going to trust the adjuster. So I want to tell you, it falls on the employer. The problem is we're insurance brokers, so I'm falling on the sword for our industry. We do a very poor job of explaining to employers how do you manage that 70%? And again, that's what we talk about in this series. So I want you to think about these bullet points. This is, I polled 153 at a SHRM conference, 153 HR people, and they said managing people is harder than ever. Work ethic is declining. 91% of the people said work ethics is declining. 9% said it's staying about the same. 0 said work ethics is improving. Work comp adjusters, if they've got over 5 years experience, everyone says we've hired a workers' comp claim. There's a lot of predators out there. Litigation is obviously increasing. Just in Georgia, in 2023, attorneys spent $223 million on advertising. And in South Florida, they have some of the highest spend in the country. So litigation is increasing. We now have private equity getting into litigation. They're actually funding attorneys to try to do more advertising, to get more claimants. Again, if a claim goes in litigation, it doesn't matter how good your insurance company is or your TPA is, costs are going to go up. And then finally, you know, we talk a lot about leadership, but that's a tall task for companies. Most companies don't have leadership. And we're going to, again, talk in a lot of detail today about leadership and how you can impact leadership within your organization.
And I just want to make one quick comment that this applies more than just workers' comp. This is also auto and general liability when you're talking about this falls on the company.
100%. So Eddie, you want to talk about kind of how leadership and claims affect overall cost? You can speak firsthand from your company experience.
Yeah, I remember when I was back on the client side, we would take our foremen and our supervisors into meetings, and we had those meetings quarterly, bringing them in and teaching them the impact of what they do and how it impacts safety and claims and your bottom line. Most supervisors that work out in the field or they work out in your warehouse or in your business, they've been promoted just based on them being good workers, right? A good work habits, they get to work on time, they know it, they know the industry, they know what they're doing, but they really don't have a lot of leadership training on communication, on how to communicate to their employees. And they definitely don't have a lot of experience in claim management. I mean, they're out there working every day, working very hard. So it's very important when we talk about safety and we talk about claims, it's extremely important to educate your leaders, especially your frontline leaders. So safety always starts at the top. It starts at the top with high-level management. We're going to see a slide later where we set the foundation in everything that we do in people risk management on leadership. So a key takeaway from this entire presentation, if you don't get anything else out of it, is train your leaders.
Eddie, let me ask you, and this might not have been your company, but you certainly have worked with a lot of companies now that you came over to the dark side and became a broker. Do you see a lot of times when a claim happens that the leadership team yells at the supervisor, gets mad at the employee? That's their natural reaction. Why did that idiot have the claim? Do you see that a lot?
Yeah, and I also see, man, you know what? We should have fired that guy. That guy was no good. He was coming in late and we don't like him. But that all happens after the claim happens. Before the claim, the worker's just out there working.
You know, and I say this, automobile insurance, fleet insurance, workers' comp insurance is an expensive, way to handle bad hires. So again, leadership weeds out a lot of those people. Sometimes the leadership is at the supervisor level that you need to maybe change supervisors. Zach?
And
Yeah,
just one last thing, thought on that. It's very important if you see employees that are kind of coming in late all the time or they have issues, that we open up communication. That's another word that I want to kind of put with leadership, to make sure that you communicate to your employees properly.
And documentation maybe too. If they're coming in late, document it.
Yeah.
Up on the screen here, you'll see a key word. Now, this is important if you're collecting your HRCI or SHRM credit hour. There's going to be a program evaluation given at the end of this session. You'll need to complete it. and also put in the 2 keywords in order to get your CEU credit. So our first keyword is leadership. So please make sure you stay the full hour. That's the only way to receive credit, and use those 2 keywords. Also, we do have the prize wheel at the end of the session. So if you do stay to the very end, we'll put your name on the prize wheel and you'll have a chance to win some Amazon gift cards. So some more incentive to stay along with us on this journey.
That's a great keyword you came up with too, Zach.
I think it applies.
So the other word we talk about, leadership, you know, we say I'm a John Maxwell certified leadership coach. So John Maxwell says leadership is influence, but leadership is also building trust. And, you know, this is actually an example Eddie used in one of our classes. I stole it from Eddie, and I love it. You think about this when you get on a plane and you get in and you get in your seat. You know, you're getting on a tube and flying at 40,000 feet. But you just get in, put your headphones on, and you just trust the process. You know, we're passengers. You know, you put your seatbelt on and you nod off. And you think about what the airlines do to build that trust. You know, first of all, it's very expensive for them if they have a crash, certainly. But also, you know, if there's ever anything wrong with the plane, there's that black box. They do, you know, all kinds of investigations. And so the airlines know to make money, they have to build trust with their passengers. But they also have to build trust with the employees. They're dependent upon their employees to do everything right. And I told the team a few weeks ago in some training, I was on a flight coming back from Mississippi, and I was on a golf trip, company trip, and we were anxious to get home, small airport, flying back to Atlanta. And they said that the flight was going to be delayed. And long story short, the mechanic didn't check one of the boxes. And when the pilot was going through his checklist, he saw one of the boxes not checked, and he could have just taken off. But the mechanic was already over his hours. They had to get another mechanic from Starkville to drive up. We had about a 3.5 hour delay in this little airport. And everybody was complaining about it. And I was the only one to tell the flight team, thank you for actually having, you know, a process in place. I didn't want to be that person, you know, the plane crashed because that one box didn't get checked. So, you know, when we talk about trust, you know, this is a good example. And, you know, I fly to Miami one week a month. I'm obviously up in the mountains in North Georgia. You can tell by my accent, but I usually fly an exit row because I'm tall, and I always pay attention. I always thank the stewardess for going over the exit row, even though I've heard it a million times, you know, because they're doing their job. And sometimes you get stewardesses that go through the motion. And most of the time, I've noticed lately, they try to make it more engaging. And so I just want you to think about building trust in your organization the same way the airlines build trust when we get on a plane. And I got this other example, and Zach made a great mention. You know, when I started the P4 process, it was workers' comp. And what we found as we were really leaning hard into workers' comp is we found the discipline and things we're doing translated to the other lines of coverage like auto and cyber and employment practice, even general liability. And I'm reminded of this example. We oftentimes, you know, and if, you know, I've got grandkids now that'll be driving before too long, but if you're old enough to have a child that turned 16, you remember all the things you went through when they were 15 and their learner's permit and all you rode with them, defensive driver training. You know, you put in risk management process, really people risk management for your kids. And when they got their license, you didn't just turn them loose. If they were going to a friend's house, you said, call me when you get there. You probably put a geofence. Thank God my parents didn't have that when I was a kid. There was no cell phones. But you probably have it on their phone, you know where they are. And there's accountability driven in. Now, think about all the things you do now. If you're a company on this webinar, and you've got a big fleet. Every day you throw the keys out to those employees. You know, if you got 100 drivers, how many of those 100 do you trust every day? Because you're giving them your checkbook. One bad day, one long night out drinking, one day where they're just, maybe it's something personal going on in their life. They're just not focused. You lose a profit for a quarter, maybe even a year, because of what's going to happen in your insurance rates. So I kind of look at it, and I tell companies, put the same discipline that you have with your own kids when you give them privileges to drive, put those in place with your drivers and take the time to be intentional about it. So I think I'm doing this one on communication. And if you guys are in the claim training program in Georgia, you've seen this. I've been using this cartoon since I think 2003. It says that's why we lift on three. Zach, you probably like this kind of Aunt Med reference, but I kind of look at it and say, this is the doctor, this is the employer, and this is the insurance company, and the poor patient falls off the gurney. And that's what happens. It is the exception to the rule that we keep good communication. The number one complaint we hear from our clients is they get very poor communication from the adjuster. The number one complaint I get from adjusters is they get poor communication from the employer. They're doing this. And what we try to do is we try to work on a process to improve communication. So I want you to think about this and again, change your perspective. Like for those of you, the 39% that said, or 32% said the insurance company, I want you to think about this. The communication internally, just think between management, supervisors, and employees. Okay, management could be the HR director that handles the claim. But then we're doing return to work, we had to pull in the supervisor. And certainly keeping that communication with the employee, you can't just cut loose the communication when they're injured. Just can't cut them loose. You got to keep them in the communication. What happens when they get an attorney? You can't communicate with them then. It's got to go through the defense attorney to the claimant attorney. Communication gets shut out. So, you know, you've got to really evolve internally a communication program between management, supervisors, and employees.
And how do you do that, Steve? How do you get in front of this?
Well, first of all, and again, I think we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but you know, management's got to be on board and say they're committed. And then they've got to do training on leadership with their supervisors. They've got to have good communication on safety and on claims. You know, if you've got an employee and they don't trust their supervisor, they're not going to trust the process.
Now,
And
we've
so,
got some safety people here, and Brian brought up a good point. Brian says that, you know, sometimes safety handles the claim and not HR. So it also applies to the safety people we have on this call.
so, you know, when I talk about communication, first of all, and Brian, I don't, if you're the safety manager for your company, Eddie knows this, I don't consider you the safety manager. The safety manager is really the supervisors. You're the safety leader. You lead safety. They really manage the safety because their day-to-day responsibility is to be over those employees. So they manage the safety for their line or their area or their job site or whatnot. And then you've got also the communication between, you know, with the employees. Like, are they being accountable? Like, they have to be more accountable. You got to teach leadership to the employees. You got to first start at management, then go to supervisors and employees. But you think about this. This is why I say 70% of the claim falls on the employer, because most of the communication that drives the cost of the claim is internal communication, not the communication with the attorney or the medical provider. It's the internal communication with the employee. So just a little different perspective on why the employer controls most of the cost.
And I think we're leading into this polling question that we have now on leadership and who has the biggest impact on safety and claims.
I can't wait to, yeah, Zach said that last time, but I can't wait to see the answer on this because we were, third in the last one. Zach?
So let's see what everyone thinks. Who has the biggest impact on safety and claims? Is it management? Is it supervisors? Or is it the employees? We'll give everyone 30, 40 seconds to answer.
When we say management, we think of ownership, we think of high-level management in the office. Supervisors would be like front-end supervisors, and then obviously employees.
We would consider the safety officer, safety leader, the HR person, we would consider them management.
Okay. 10, 15 seconds to answer. Still have more people filling in the poll.
Can I guess?
Yeah, what's your guess, Steve?
I think it's going to be close to the last poll. Completely different question. I think you're going to see it about a third, a third, and a third.
It's close. You're about right. Okay, we're going to end the poll here. Let's see the results. So management, 49%, supervisors, 20%, and employees, 31%. So management seems to be the highest percentage.
Wow. We got a lot of management people on this call, I bet. So that makes sense because we got a lot of HR people. So the biggest impact on safety and claims, half management, 20% supervisors. Interesting. So, again, as we talk about this leadership and we talked about where management's role is and the supervisor's role and the employee's role, I got to tell you, this is a trick question because really, I think they're all equal. I didn't put that as an answer because I wanted to see what people think. But ultimately, management has to set the tone. They have to set the tone for the company. That's why it's so important for management to invest in a really good new hire training, for example. If you don't set the tone for the employee day one, they're going to bring whatever baggage they have from their other company that didn't care about safety. They're going to bring it there. They're going to say they don't care about me either. So you got one chance to get them. That's on management. The ongoing relationship once they start really falls over to your supervisor. That's why Eddie said leadership is so important. We do a lot of leadership training. We're going to talk about it in more detail for supervisors. Again, we're not corporate leadership trainers. We're trying to teach them to understand their role in leadership and how it impacts safety and claims. And then finally, on the post-claim, who causes the claims? Eddie, who's in accidents?
Most of the time, it's the employee that's in the accident.
But rarely do we get somebody from management or supervisor injured. It's usually the employees. And what we find is typically when we do our root cause investigation, the employer says, well, the employee wasn't wearing their safety glasses. Well, Eddie, whose responsibility is it for them to be wearing their safety glasses?
It's the employee's responsibility, but the leadership, the frontline leadership needs to lead by example and also wear theirs.
They got to lead by example. Management's got to have a policy. Supervisors got to enforce it. If you've got a situation where, the guy's not wearing his safety glasses and he gets steel in his eye, you've got to look at it and say, is that happening every day and we just got caught? Or is it really that exception that one time the employee doesn't wear it? Typically, it's happening over again. And the law of large numbers pretty soon, near miss, big claim.
Now, we've had some comments here from the chat,
Yeah.
Steve, and one of the things that Charles from Scaff Tech brought up, and a shout out to him real quick, is how safety needs to work together and hand with HR. So when we say human resources, it's human resources and safety that need to work together.
That's what we talk about, breaking the silos down. Shout out to Charles. Several months ago, he had an injured employee and he pretty much was out of his safety role for about a week because he wanted to ensure that employee got everything he needed in the workers' comp process. He stayed attached to that file. I've never seen a safety officer more tied to an injured employee. So when you do that, you have less litigation when you show care and concern. But really, when it comes down to a claim, even if in the organization, safety is the one handling the claim, you still need HR to be involved. There's a lot of stuff in their paperwork that you do on the P1 paperwork, and P2, you get a post-offer health questionnaire. There's things you do that you need to, if you're handling a claim, you need to compel that stuff. If it's return to work and you're bringing them back less hours at less pay, you need to coordinate that with HR so the proper payroll. Like Florida is one of the worst states in the country. If you don't have the pay exactly right, you get assessed penalties. And so the coordination between HR, operations, and safety, if you have safety, is critical. If you just have one and they're not all talking to each other, you're going to be leaking
And I
oil.
think we got a great slide coming up next on leadership and safety knowledge that really hammers home this.
Yeah, you want to take this one, Eddie?
So you've got employees in the middle here. If this was a dartboard, right? You got supervisors and you got management. Management is in charge of setting the expectations. The supervisors, as I said before, lead by examples. So let's say you're working for a construction company and you're a supervisor. If you get out of your truck and you don't put on your hard hat, you can't expect everyone else to put on their hard hat because it all starts with you. As Brian said in this chat right now, it all starts by leading by example. That's why we're talking about leadership so much. And then the employees
Go
need to
ahead.
be accountable for themselves. There has to be some accountability. That's why they're in the middle of everything here.
Yeah, we don't want to put them on a dartboard though. We're talking about safety now. I want to say this, and that's a great explanation, but I want you to think about this. We're insurance brokers. We always start our conversation at the C level with the owner, the CFO, HR, whoever's handling the insurance. That's where we start. What we like to do in our agency is we like to say, look, we want to kind of go past the corner office and get out into the plant, get out on a job site and look what's really going on and report back to you what we see. Now, I want you to think about this. There's never been, again, I've worked with thousands of clients and 42 years of experience in mostly a risk management role in the insurance brokerage side. I've never had a prospective new client tell me when I asked the question, do you wish your employees were more accountable? Do you wish they would take more accountability for their own actions? Every employer says yes. I said, well, to do that, management's got to set the expectations, and then you've got to train your supervisors to lead by example. Leadership, and you've got to have leadership at the supervisor level. So if you want to increase accountability for the employees, you gotta step up from a management and supervisory level.
So Steve, let's delve just a little high level overview because the upcoming trainings, we're going to go deeper into P1, P2, P3, P4, because these are the processes that you're going to implement at your company to make you a better organization. So let's just do a high overview of the 4 Ps.
Sure. Then we'll start with pre-hire before the person ever comes in. And again, you're probably thinking, what in the world is insurance broker talking about a hiring process? But we know this, if we don't have a little bit of a speed bump at the hiring process, predators are going to come in and they're very expensive to deal with. Clients get very upset. They get agitated that the workers' comp carrier pays a claim. And when we do the root cause, we find out really there was no firewall. And I work with a lot of industries that are, particularly since COVID, they're saying, look, man, if they got a pulse, we're hiring them. We can't get people working. I'm saying that's okay. We're not saying they got to have a Harvard MBA to work for the company. We're saying there's a few things you can do at the pre-hire process and to mitigate a bad employment decision. And I have asked this question hundreds and hundreds of times. If you knew then what you know now, we're in the middle of, say, a workers' comp claim or a big auto claim, an at-fault auto claim, would you still hire the guy? And the answer is always no. So all we're saying in the pre-hire is to put a few things in place, and we're going to talk about these in much more detail in our next webinar. And we roll over into post-offer. The really pre-hire and post-offer are part of the HR process. This is the stuff, okay, pre-hire, do we even want to hire the guy or gal? Post-offer, we made a conditional job offer, and before they start working, we're going to get a drug test, we're going to get an MVR, are we going to, put them through a new hire safety orientation? And I'm kind of reminded, again, I stole this kind of partially, it was a little different concept from Eddie, but you guys all see this phone. I can remember, I'm old enough to remember this phone. And phones like this. I remember my grandmother had a phone just like this. And what I'm reminded of is I'm reminded when I look at employers, how they do things and how they onboard people, they're doing it the same way they did it 40 years ago. And they haven't really updated. And the challenges are greater. I think the work ethic, remember all the things I cited earlier that really dictate to you, hey, before you start the person working, you got to do certain things. And again, we're going to get into the P1 and P2 in our next webinar. And then we get over to P3. And, Eddie comes from a prevention background. So Eddie, talk about how we view prevention a little bit different than old safety Eddie and people risk management Eddie.
So if you look at this picture, you've got people pointing at each other, kind of pointing, directing the blame to someone else, and then they got the mirror where they're looking at themselves. First, you got to look at yourself before you look at anyone else, and before you establish blame to anybody else. Accountability starts with that person, which is you. And accountability also starts in the P1 and the P2 before you even get to P3. Because if you have a bad hire and you don't have bad hiring practices, there's nothing by the time you get to prevention that's going to take that bad hire and make him a good hire. He's already a bad hire. So I think what's changed for me going through people risk management is being more proactive than being reactive. Because as we're going to P3 to P4, you're going to see in P4 the post claim. If you have a bad hire, you get to P3, and it's going to be very difficult to change that bad hire.
I got to tell you, and these guys hear it all the time. I talk about the 20-60-20 rule, and I think 20% of the people in with my clients, they're going to do what's right no matter what. It doesn't matter. They get hurt. They try to drag themselves into work the next day, and you're like, dude, you need to stay home for a day. There's 20%, no matter what you do, they're not going to follow on the right path. They're going to be challenging. They're going to go get an attorney. That's just how they're going to be. And 60% could go either way. So one of the things we talk about a lot in prevention is not just going through compliance training, but actually we do a lot in the micro-learning space of trying to get the message about prevention is why. Why are we talking about this stuff? We want you to get home safely to your kids and your family. And we do it in a lot of innovative ways, but what we connect in prevention is the why behind it. And then ultimately we start getting them to understand it's in their best interest to do what's right. It's in their best interest to follow safety rules. When you get employees to understand that these rules are in place for their best interest, rather than just being company rules, that's when you move the needle. And then we get to P4, which is claims. So, I'm not going backwards for the sake of time, but I'm going to scroll back. Think about this. When we talk about 70%, first of all, we got the leadership. Then we got the pre-hire, clearly falls on the employer, not the insurance carrier. Post-offer, clearly the employer, not the insurance carrier. Prevention, clearly the employer, not the insurance company. And then we get to claims. And I would argue that even in the claim process of managing the claim, 70% after the claims happen. Forget about all the things the client managed before the claim that impacts claim costs. Now the claim happens, it still falls on the employer. They're the ones that set the tone for return to work. They're the ones that show care and concern. I mean, I don't care if you're an adjuster on this call, if you got an employer that doesn't show any care and concern for the employee, doesn't have a return to work process, you got really no way to manage that claim. So what we say is if you do everything well and you're an employer on this call, you do everything well in P1, P2, and P3, and then you have an action plan to follow when you have a claim. Action plan is for fleet, for GL, for work comp, for cyber, for employment practice. You know what to do on your side of the fence, and you gift wrap the claim for the adjuster. Now they can take it and run with it. Now they can do their job. And adjusters, most adjusters, I find, if you give them the right information, can do a pretty good job. While employers are frustrated is they don't see good claims outcomes, but they don't understand all the stuff that falls on their side of the fence. So
Which
Zach,
leads us into our second keyword, influence. So if you're collecting the CEU credit, please write down the word influence. You're going to need this for your program eval. So the first word was leadership. So now we have influence. So write down the words leadership and influence. This is just to show that you were in attendance for the webinar. You'll need these in order to collect your CEU credits.
I might have to make you an honorary John Maxwell coach, man, because leadership is influence. So the two key words are leadership and influence. You're the man. Eddie, you want to talk about this?
Yeah, back when I was on the client side, we had a broker, we had the insurance company, we had a lot of different players involved in our organization from the outside in. And I think if I look back at what we were doing, we were kind of dealing a lot with the insurance carrier when we had a claim or we wanted training, and we weren't really leaning in on the broker and the broker's resources for training and getting involved before the accident happens. We call it strategic risk management. So being strategic before the claim or accident happens. So the actual broker or agent should be in the middle between the carrier and the insurance company in assisting with everything from training. You mentioned micro learning. Micro learning is very important, getting the message across to your employees and really doing what we call people risk management.
I want you to think about this if you're an employer. If we're not in the middle and we don't know the things you're doing and we're not guiding you and helping you with a strategy, how can we put your best foot forward in front of the insurance carrier and get the best program? We can't. We just rely on a flat piece of paper and loss runs. So it's really twofold. It's one, giving you consultative advice to help you, but it's also having a plan, to take good to great and things you don't do so good, getting them to good. And, we're pushing, we got several clients on the webinar. They know we've got a stewardship plan. We push our clients, but this is, I probably shouldn't say this, Eddie, you might want to unplug my mic before I say this, but think about this. Think about our industry. The worse you are as an employer, the more claims you have that are uncontrolled, the more your premiums go up. The more your premiums go up, the more money we make as an insurance broker. We're actually talking about a process that sounds counterintuitive. How do we help our clients drive down cost? So, you think about, are all agents represent the same carriers? I mean, we do. Every agency has access now. That's different than when I started 40 years ago. You used to have franchise value when you represented certain insurance carrier. We now represent all of them. And it's the most convoluted system because whoever sends the first application unlocks that market. And if we go a week later with a really good story to tell about you, we can't even access it because they already submitted an application. So it doesn't really work. What you should do is really, you pay your broker a lot of money, get them to put a little investment back into your company by making you better on your side of the fence.
And this reminds me a lot of what I did back at Physicians Health Center, is being that liaison between the insured and the carrier and helping facilitate that communication, providing additional resources. So what does your partners do for you? Reach out to them because they're there to assist you. What programs, what initiatives, how can they guide you to make you better? So think about this in general across the board. Who can help develop your program?
I'm reminded when I went with our boss uh, to have dinner with Zach, and we were recruiting Zach, and he wanted me to go meet him, and sharp young guy. And I said, "Do we really want to hire him?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "We're going to lose that asset at physician at the health at the med clinic if we hire him. Like he's been our go-to guy when our clients can't get somebody in front of a doctor. We just pick up the phone. He was our connector." And I said, "Man, you sure we want to lose that? I mean, he might be better off in that role." But we were glad we hired him. But that's another thing from your vendors is you got to be connected with them. We don't have all the expertise within EIG. We got a really good, solid risk management department, a lot of bench strength, but we got relationships with attorneys. We've got relationships with third-party safety companies, even though we got safety in-house. We had relationships with people like Zach where we could get things done. And that's what you look for with a broker is helping you connect the dots so you can improve communication. Imagine if you got a good employee and he's hurt and you can't get him into the right doctor, and they're sitting there waiting and they're hurt, they're probably going to go get an attorney. And you're going to be frustrated because you presented the claim to the insurance company and they just didn't jump through the hoops to get the person seen by the right person. Imagine if you've got a litigated case. We like to name legal counsel. We like to pick the attorney so we know they're working for our client. And so this consultative model about guidance is really getting someone to connect the communication dots for you. So
we've got a whole webinar series coming up that we're doing. I think if we go to the next slide, we'll see it.
Well, the next slide is a plane crash. And these guys hear me say this all the time. All the stuff we're talking about, what do I say, Eddie?
It doesn't matter until it matters.
Nothing happens. Like your insurance carrier, it doesn't matter what insurance carrier you have until you have a claim. Really doesn't matter. Maybe you have a broker, nothing ever happens. We find some of the most challenging clients are ones that just haven't had a claim in a while because they're not prepared. And when disaster hits them, they just don't know what to do. And next thing you know, they're getting non-renewed and their mod's going up to 2.0. Now the plane's crashed and we're trying to dig through the ashes. And so we tell everybody, I mean, a lot of our bigger clients have because if they've got 1,000 employees in a manufacturing, they're having claims. They probably have someone within the organization that knows how to manage it. If you're having 10 claims a month, 120 claims a year, you probably know what to do. If you're having 3 or 4 claims a year, lost time claims a year, you don't maybe have that repetition of experience.
So we've given you an introduction to people risk management, but there is a lot more that we need to train you on. So each month we're going to have a new topic that we're going to further expand on. We're going to bring in industry experts to help build on these topics. So we're going to have a lot of great presenters. We're going to be offering the CEU credits. So be ready, join our mailing list. We're going to send out the invite very soon, and you're going to be able to register for all the upcoming series. So you can just do it at once. You're going to get those CEU credits, and you are definitely going to gain knowledge and learn from these trainings.
Zach, I just wanted to read them real quick here. The first one coming up in September is how to reduce risk with new hires. Very important on how to be proactive. We talked about the P1 and the P2 for that, the first 2 Ps. And then in October, increasing accountability with your safety program. That focuses on the 3rd P, which is prevention. And then in November, we have improve your claims management. That focuses on the 4th P, which is post-claim and what you do before the claim happens and how you set yourself to succeed instead of being reactive. In December, we have fleet safety for owners and managers. Very important. You can have one accident. We're having accidents now with clients that are policy limit accidents over $1 million, and that can really impact your profit margin in your company. And then in January, risk management considerations for cyber and employment practices. So all these kind of tie in together. We're going to be sending invites for each of these, so please be on the lookout.
And I just want to add the foundation for each one of these is what we talked about today is leadership. And without leadership, you're not going to have any of these processes in place. So everything starts with leadership. And, the biggest challenge we get from prospects is, man, this is a lot to bite off. How do we get started? And I want to tell you, you do it step by step. And this is not a process that you put in place in 30 days or 60 days or maybe even 6 months. It might be evolve over 2 or 3 years, but you start with a foundation. I tell the guys again, I just moved into a new home. It took 3 years to build. We had to get the site work done. That was challenging. The foundation in, very challenging. Once we got the foundation in, and in this case, the foundation is leadership. Once we got the foundation in place, things started going vertical pretty quickly. So again, taking the time to get that foundation in will set the tone for the rest of these. And Zach, I want to say one more quick thing. If you found benefit and you see benefit from these, feel free to send a webinar invite to other guests or other people, stakeholders you work with. If you think they would benefit with any of these, this is education. This is not a sales presentation. It's an education presentation.
And with that, we do have a takeaway. We're going to be sending out an email after this webinar with the link for the program evaluation. I'm also going to put that in the chat right now so you can start completing your eval. So this is very important. We encourage everyone to complete this. I'm just putting the URL in here right now. So click that link. Now, we are going to have a takeaway here. So this is a leadership training guide. So this is a 12-step series that you can implement at your company to help develop your supervisors as leaders. The first 2 sessions, we will assist with leading. So reach out to us. We're going to be able to help kick off your leadership training. So myself or someone from the team will come out and get you going. And then we're going to provide you content so that you can continue this leadership training within your organization. So be on the lookout for that email. It will have the document in there with further information on how you can develop your leadership program. And it's time. So if we continue to the next slide. Well, that's our contact information. One more slide is going to get to the good stuff. Well, we actually have a Q&A, but we're running out of time. So if you have any questions, please send us an email as follow-up and we will respond to you directly and have it prepared for one of our future webinars. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So if anyone has been on a previous webinar with me knows there is a prize wheel at the end. So I am just going to load this up on my screen.
While he loads the prize wheel, I put my email address in the chat box. So if you didn't get a chance to take a picture of that screen, please go ahead. You can email me at eddie.martinez@eigrisk.com. Again, it's in the chat box. If you have any questions or need additional information on anything we spoke about.
Spin the wheel, Zach.
Okay, so can we see the wheel on the screen?
Yep.
Oh, perfect. All right. So everyone who registered is on this wheel. Let me shuffle the names a couple times. We've got 2 $50 Amazon gift cards we're going to be giving away. So for the first $50 Amazon gift card, let's spin the wheel.
I don't see oh, there it goes.
There it goes.
That's a lot.
And Eddie, if you could just write down who the winner is.
Yep.
Fausto Sanchez, you are the winner. You have won a $50 Amazon gift card. We're going to email that to you soon after the webinar. So be on the lookout for an email from Amazon. And they did not sponsor this. This was sponsored by us. Okay. We got one more. Spin the wheel.
I wonder, can Steve and I win?
No, I was going to give my work comp playbook out, and they said they were giving money. I said, okay, let's give them money.
David Stone, you have won. Congratulations to our winners. So we appreciate everyone attending.
Again, I put my email address. It's there again on the screen. There's Zach's email information. There's my phone number, Zach's phone number. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. We will put you on the list for the additional webinars every month. Feel free, as Steve said, to share those webinars with different folks, whether your company or other companies, anyone that you would think would benefit from it.
And one last thing for me, Zach and Eddie, is come ready to work in the next ones, because we're gonna get into it, into these processes themselves. It'll be less philosophical and more in the trenches. So look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day.